Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this session. Speak to you about digital risk security and Skurio's offering for digital risk security, especially in India. My name is Prakash Anthony. I head the sales for Bulwark Technologies in India. My contact details are mentioned here. And if you have any questions regarding today's webinar, please feel to drop me an email anytime. So without further delay, I would like to begin this. So what we have on agenda today, we're going to give you a brief introduction to Bulwark Technologies as an organization, as a distribution company out of the Middle East and India. Skurio is an organization and Skurio's offering. We're going to give you a little brief on the digital risk protection, the need of this particular technology in the current situation. Jeremy, our presenter today, is going to be taking us through the features of Skurio. He will be giving us a couple of demos and use cases for us to be able to get a better understanding of this technology. Finally, we'll have the Q&A sessions. We are open to questions. We'll try and see how best we could answer your questions and queries. Bulwark Technologies, just to give you a brief insight into what Bulwark Technology does, we basically look at challenges in the digital risk protection. We are a distribution company for deception technologies, secure managed file transfers, user behavior analytics, data loss prevention solutions, email archival, network monitoring, NMS solutions, IT asset management, workspace virtualization, multi-factor authentication solutions, robotic process automation, patch management solutions, PIM-PAM solutions, disaster recovery, cloud backup solutions, 21 years of experience in the Middle East. We have begun a journey here in India in 2017, established in the year 1999 in the Middle East. We have a tie-up with 22 plus global technology vendors across the globe, 700 plus partners in Middle East and in India. We have an excellent track record in delivering world-class products, excellent customer support service that we have, partnering with the best of breed technology vendors, offering award-winning products with excellent customer service, round the clock added services through our partner network across Middle East, in India and the subcontinent in general. We work as an extended arm of security vendors, representing them in this region, promoting and selling their IT security products and solutions through our reseller channel partners. We work along with Skurio in the similar manner. We have a dedicated sales, marketing, and certified technical team. Digital risk security and how Skurio's digital risk security platform automates searching the surface, the dark, the deep web for your critical business and potential threats that could be lying beyond your network. And that's the key here, that we are trying to help you in the areas that lie beyond your network. So managing cybersecurity inside alone is no longer enough, because critical data is shared with your critical data is shared with partners and suppliers. Now, this data can be shared and traded alongside threats, exploits, either on the surface, deep or dark websites. The result is potential risk to your business, disruption. We are looking at loss of revenue. We are looking at damaged reputation for an organization, much more. What does digital risk protection reduce? I mean, it would reduce risk that emerge from transformation, protecting against unwanted exposure of an organization data and brand. At the same time, we also help you provide actionable insights on threats from the open, deep and dark web. Putting in front of you a report, a statistic which will help you to know how these kind of cyber attacks have increased exponentially in the last few years. Within India, we've seen a notable rise in cyber attacks in India. India was the second most cyber attack country in Asia Pacific in the year 2020. Data leaks due to vulnerabilities have become a common instance in India, especially in the last 2 years with COVID, in the COVID era. But the disturbing trend, my friends, is that in India has been that organizations fail to acknowledge that a breach has happened. Almost 300% rise in cyber attacks in India. This has been informed by the government to the parliament with data coming from the CRT. In India, the means by which ransomware is executed normally is by sending suspicious links via emails or messages to block access to one's personal files or data. And it's the most rampant cybercrime, accounting to almost 40% of all attacks. And the verticals that are targeted most, 60% of the attacks are happening in the finance and the insurance sector, followed by manufacturing and professional services. And the new understanding of these kind of attacks is that the whole point of these ransomware attacks has now shifted to name and shame of the organization. And this is the modus operandi that is being followed. Free covert hackers now just don't encrypt their data and ask for a ransom to hand over the decryption key to the company. But now, while they encrypt the data, before doing that, they exfiltrate the data so that they can further pressurize and threaten the company into releasing money. Otherwise, their customer data will be sold over the dark web. And I think this slide will give you some understanding as to what is actually what I'm telling you and how you could relate to all this. What you see are some of the organizations which have had this kind of experience in the last 6 to 8 months. So they basically further pressurize and threaten the company to releasing money. Otherwise, their customer data will be sold over the dark web. And Bitcoin seems to be the new favorite mode of payment, as it is highly secure and almost impossible to track. Indian companies today, almost all of us know, they are quite financially well-to-do. They have a brand to worry about, apart from the massive personal, financial, and user behavioral data also that they hold. Some of the organizations come under cyber attacks are India's top telecom companies, grocery portals, payment gateways, pharma companies, just to name a few industry verticals without naming the organizations. Now, the recent cyber attack shows some clear example that we are heading towards a big crisis where organizations are becoming a victim of major data leaks, and their data is being put on the dark web for sale as a searchable database. It is therefore very important to strengthen the IT infrastructure for individuals as well as for organizations that are working on this, on scaling of the security to protect companies' data from getting hacked. So while in India, we are aiming to increase the internet connectivity so that it reaches even the remotest parts of the country. On the other hand, our country struggles with phishing attacks, cyber attacks, and major companies' data are getting leaked. We do understand from Bulwark Technologies and Skurio that keeping on top of your IT security and defending your business from threats and your network from attacks is a tough and it's a never-ending struggle. Finding the time or the expertise to be able to monitor for threats and breaches outside your network, that feels like an even bigger challenge. That's where Skurio's fully automated intuitive solutions are easy to use with integrations to your existing core IT infrastructure, your security systems. They have open APIs to be able to integrate with your existing infrastructure. And of course, Skurio's team of expert security analysts help you whenever you need them. Brief note on our key presenter today, Mr. Jeremy Hendy, CEO of Skurio, 33-year IT veteran. He joins us in from London. Thank you, Jeremy, for joining us today and taking us through Skurio's offering with digital risk protection from Skurio. So without further delay, as we begin, big thank you from Skurio and Bulwark Technologies to each one of you for joining us for this session. Over to you, Jeremy.
Thanks very much, Prakash. Skurio and our digital risk protection solution, but more importantly, how you can use it to help protect your own organizations. So I'm going to spend a bit of time just explaining what do we mean by digital risk protection, probably a new concept or a new sector of cybersecurity for you, and then explaining how it can help, the capability can help manage digital risk within your organization. And the 4 key use cases are protecting your staff, your infrastructure, your customer data, and maybe most importantly, your business reputation, as Prakash has shown as a result of data breaches that can have a huge impact on companies' reputation. A little bit about Skurio. We're based in the UK. We've been operating for the last 10 years. Originally, our customers were UK government and intelligence agencies and law enforcement. For the last 5 years, we've been focused 100% on the commercial sector. And we have a SaaS, cloud-hosted SaaS platform that is used to deliver a couple of different variants of digital risk protection, breach alert, and cyber threat intelligence. But we focus on making this very easy to use and very affordable, particularly for organizations that are and don't have this capability in-house today. So I think, taking it as an example, cybersecurity has often been treated as a bit like a fortress. It's been about defending the perimeter of the organization. So a lot of organizations' cybersecurity strategy, even going back to the last century, was built on defending the perimeter of the endpoints, the firewalls, by trying to build the walls higher to stop people getting into the organization. And we see there's been fundamental changes in those requirements now because data isn't always in your organization anymore. Your data is now in the cloud, and it doesn't matter how good your own cybersecurity is. It doesn't matter how well defended your perimeter is. If your data is leaked through a supply chain partner or in the cloud. So what we say is you really need to start thinking about a different philosophy of cybersecurity, because just building the walls higher isn't going to solve the problem. And I think there are three main areas that we think have impacted this in the last few years. One is the emergence of very complex supply chains. We've all got lots of apps and APIs that are used to deliver services to our customers in a very positive way for the customer experience. It's all real time. It's on any device. It's 24/7. But data is flowing around hundreds or even thousands of different systems. The emergence of cloud means we no longer control the cybersecurity, because our servers are not our own. They're not in our data center. They're not in our building anymore. We're reliant on someone else to keep those cloud apps secure. And another big trend is the use of what's called shadow IT. So these are systems that your staff are using to do their job, but you don't know about them, and you certainly can't control their security. And there's so many services out there that are really helpful to businesses that are low cost. They're even free in some cases, and it's very easy for your employee to just sign up to them, log into them, and start using them. But you may have business data going through those. And the problem, of course, with the supply chain is it's only as good as its weakest link. If one of those elements of the supply chain gets infiltrated by a hacker, or if one of those shadow IT systems suffers a breach, your data could be lost through no fault of your own, because it's not necessarily your system that's been breached, but it's your data that's got lost. So that's where digital risk protection comes in. And what do we mean by digital risk protection? It's really these three components. It's tailored threat intelligence, so detecting threats that are specific to your organization and detecting those in real time so you can take action against them. It's dark web monitoring, so it's covering the bits of the internet that Google doesn't reach, and looking for hacker groups, hacker forums discussing your organization, either targeting you for an attack, or sharing and marketing data that's been breached from your organization. And that final element of data breach detection is if your data has been leaked through a supply chain partner or a cloud app or a failure in cybersecurity, it's really important you find out about it quickly so you can prepare a response plan and not find out about that data breach on the evening news. So DRP, it's a SaaS platform, it's automated. It doesn't connect to your network, so it's looking outside the firewall for threats and data relevant to your organization. And it can be delivered either as an automated SaaS service where you manage it yourself, or including threat intelligence analyst services, providing a managed service layer if that's more appropriate to your organization. And really, we're covering four main areas of data that you want to protect. So your data about your staff, threats to your infrastructure, data about your customers, and that business critical information. So it's really thinking about your assets in those kind of categories and defending the organization against those threats and breaches. So the DRP platform is really doing four things. It's detecting threats and data in real time. It's alerting you, so you know that it's been found. It's helping you take action to understand what has happened, and then hopefully analyze and address the root cause of the failure or the threat. Data breaches happen not just because of the hackers. 90% of them are typically human error. They're something like an email being sent to the wrong person, or data being transferred and not protected when it's being transferred. And for the DRP platform, it doesn't matter how that data got out. We're detecting it no matter where it's leaked from. You can think about data living in three different places. So one is inside your network, your own network, where you know about it and control it. It could be in your supply chain. So you know that you're sharing a data with a partner, but you don't control the cybersecurity of that partner. Or it could be data that's outside your network altogether, on a shadow IT system, on an employee device. And really it's thinking about those four categories of data: your staff, your infrastructure, your customers, and what's critical to your business. So what we do with the DRP platform is we take each of those data types and we construct a set of search terms. And this can be as simple as your corporate email domain, or it could be a list of 1 million customer credentials. It could be a list of your servers, your sites, your IP addresses, your company names. Lots of different ways of deploying DRP, but fundamentally we're taking data about your business, coming up with a set of search terms, putting those search terms into the DRP platform, and the DRP platform will then monitor on an automated way the surface, deep, and dark web, looking for new data that matches those search terms and notifying you when it occurs. And of course, through the APIs, you can integrate this into your existing security systems to help raise tickets automatically or notify your staff, or if you want to get additional benefit from that automation. But fundamentally, a very simple solution sitting outside your firewall, detecting threats and data that are relevant to you. So we're going to look at some examples and some real life stories about each of those kinds of data. And we'll start off with protecting your staff, particularly the corporate networks they access, the cloud apps, and the shadow IT. And often this comes back to a very basic, very basic, reuse passwords is a big problem. This statistic from the Verizon breach report last year said that over 80% of hacking related breaches involved the use of lost or stolen credentials. And it's just like, losing your keys. If your staff are reusing passwords, it's very easy for hackers to get into a system. And this was a quote from one of the Microsoft CISOs saying, hackers don't break in anymore, they just log in because it's much easier given the volume of data that is around. And if you think about, unauthorized access to different systems that can happen if your staff are reusing passwords, it's not just those core IT systems that you use in your business, the corporate email, the shared network drives, where you probably have very good security, you have multi-factor authentication. People can still try to get into that. And if I've got an email address and a password that I know a member of staff uses, I can try to get access to those systems either through automated scripts or through highly targeted spear phishing. I can try a variance of that password, different capital letters, adding some numbers. But then there's also all these other systems that your staff use and that are a little bit outside your control, like the cloud systems that you use that are official, like maybe Salesforce, or your HR system could be in the cloud. It could be those shadow IT systems where you have no protection from your single sign-on, probably don't have multi-factor authentication enabled, but that can still be sensitive corporate data in those systems. And even at the personal level, corporate social media, if somebody can hijack the LinkedIn profile of your CEO by reusing their password, they can do a lot of damage to your reputation. And at an individual level, we often see exposed passwords being used to socially engineer the employees into giving up some more details or even to blackmail them. And the challenge is you can protect those core systems using techniques like single sign-on and multi-factor authentication can help you mitigate the risk from a reused password. But a lot of that attack surface is outside your control. So you need to rely on employee awareness and educating them about the dangers of compromised passwords. And I'll tell you a story. This is a real example. The data we've used here is anonymized because it's obviously we're doing this in a public webinar, but this is a real story. And so this is a very typical example dump we would see of credentials on a bin or paste site where we've got a couple of thousand email addresses and passwords being exposed. This example triggered an automated alert on our platform because included in that data dump was a customer email domain. This is a fictional version of it, but it was a real story. So it exposed an email address from one of our customers and a plain text password, Liverpool, which was the favorite football team of that employee. The real example, it was actually West Ham, not Liverpool, but you get the idea. And this happens a lot. And so the challenge here is that that exposed credential can immediately generate a risk of compromise to the organization. So that could be if the employees use the same password or a similar password for their corporate email account. There could be a potential to get in for a business email compromise. Maybe the hackers can use that to try and get into a network or a VPN or do some spear phishing or blackmail them. So what can you do about that? When you detect that as a security team, you can take action to, for example, request Skurio to see if we can get that post taken down to limit the exposure. But you could also maybe force a password change for that employee. You can inform the user by email from the security team, maybe including a redacted version of that password, letting them know it's been exposed and telling them to go and change it if they've used that same password on any third-party sites. And you can definitely educate the employee. The fact their email address and a password has been exposed means they will automatically be getting more phishing emails because the bad guys use these data lists as well. You need to educate them about choosing good passwords. Really good solution is to deploy a password manager and make it free for the employee to always use a unique password for every site. And we'll come back to that example a little bit later in the presentation. Another real life example, this was, again, we've changed the names, but this was an investment bank in London. And the fund manager, so the guy that's got access to hundreds of millions of pounds of funding, his email address popped up on another dump site. And what's happened here is he's used the same password on multiple sites. In this example, Lucy, Tom, and Charlie are the names of his kids. Again, people often use the names of their husbands, wives, kids as passwords. And what's happened here is one of those third-party sites, maybe LinkedIn, has got hacked. The credentials have been leaked. And then what a second hacker has done is use automated scripts to try and see if they can get into, in this case, Netflix. And they've come up with a list of email credentials that will work for Netflix. They're selling them on a hacker forum. And then they've delivered the data to the buyer on an anonymous paste site. Our DRP platform has detected it. And so now we know that member of staff has had his email address and this password exposed in a breach. And so the challenge there is that represents a risk back to the organization. So very simple, email addresses and passwords. It's what the hackers use to get into systems. And it's very easy with our system to detect those compromised email addresses and passwords and do something about them. Let's take another look at some use cases for DRP in protecting your infrastructure. So this is your servers, your sites, your domains, your IP addresses. Again, another real story. We're using a different example here, but one of our banking customers was being targeted by Hacktivist groups. So the anonymous hacking group was targeting their organization for a DDoS attack. And in fact, before they deployed the DRP solution, all their sites were taken down for 2 or 3 days as a result of a coordinated DDoS attack by hackers. When they deployed the DRP solution, we're now detecting these attack planning in real time and helping them defend against that attack. So what we see here on the right is an example of a script. It's a reconnaissance script that's been posted on a hacker forum by a hacker group, and they're often target multiple organizations. In this example, this is a hospital that's being targeted in Chile. And what the bad actors are doing is they're running a penetration test. They're looking, they've got automated scripts looking for weaknesses in your infrastructure. They're publishing those results on hacker forums to encourage hacking or DDoS attacks. And here in this example, we're also detecting the fact that this penetration test, a link to it is being shared by this hacking group, JTSec, that's part of Anonymous. And now what we can do is we're detecting this being posted in real time, so we can help the customer block the attack. So it gives you early warning of an operation being planned, so you can increase things like web application firewall. You can make sure the IT security team is fully prepared for an attack over the next few days. But also this gives us useful intelligence. We can see some hashtags that are being used by the bad guys, so we can then monitor those hashtags to track what's happening in the operation and react to it in real time to defend our organization against it. So that's an example of attack planning on the infrastructure. We're also seeing a lot of brand impersonation at the moment through something called typosquatting. So this is people registering very similar looking domains to my own in order to be able to launch maybe phishing attacks against my customers or staff. Very, very hard to spot a fake domain, particularly on a mobile device. These two examples of Skurio.com you see here. This top one actually is a fake. That's not a letter U. It's an international symbol that looks a little bit like a U. Very hard to spot. But as a real example here, here what we see on the right-hand side is a fake website for a bank called Grindlays. It's a brand that used to be used by Standard Chartered and for Australia New Zealand Bank for a while. And what we saw here with this hacker group was they registered several dozen fake domains over the course of several weeks. You can see different variants there, grindlaysprivatebanking.com, some of them using the Standard Chartered name, using .com, Pakistan domains. And sometimes the domains would initially be parked, so you can't really see much activity there, but you know that could become a threat. So by monitoring that domain, you can then detect if there's been a change and suddenly there's a fake website that's been set up to use for phishing. In other cases, the cyber criminals aren't that smart. They're leaving the server exposed. We can see here the roots, so we know, okay, so there is something being planned here. We can monitor that domain. We can look for any changes, and more importantly, we can request a takedown of that site or domain to try and stop the phishing, to try and stop the fraud. And as an example, just yesterday I ran some examples searches based on just three Indian banks here on the left, and in the last 7 days, you can see here some example domains that have been registered that look very suspicious. Here we've got, ICICI Bank that's been the N has been replaced with an M, so obviously designed to look like it might be a legitimate site. This is all automated detection. We can do a fuzzy search to say, okay, if a new domain has been registered that looks a little bit similar to my own brand, I can detect it and investigate it. So one of these for hdfcbank.com, here's the example. This was registered on Sunday, the 26th, I've got a automated detection through into the Skurio platform. I can then go and investigate that website, and I can see already here from this screenshot, there's already a very plausible looking website that's been put up. It's using the logo of the bank. It's got links that may be phishing links. It's something you can investigate and say, okay, is this a genuine site that's been registered by part of my organization, or is it a site that's going to be used for phishing? And so the workflow is very simple. We set up a search in the DRP platform based around my domain name, about that keyword. We're then detecting those similar looking domains being registered, and we'll generate an alert. You can then go and investigate the different domains that have been registered, decide if any are malicious, and then within our platform, you can investigate it yourself, make some notes, but you can also ask our analysts for an opinion on it, or request a takedown, a site takedown of that site within the platform. So, very easy to deal with as long as you're getting that real-time alert notification that a new domain has been registered. So those are a couple of examples of how events outside your infrastructure can be used to detect threats to it. Next, we'll move on to talking a little bit about customer data. This is usually what hits the news and the newspapers and the TV is when you lose data about your customers. And of course, in today's digital world, there's lots of different ways and lots of different systems that customers pass through in their customer journey, all the way from initial client acquisition, so webinars like this, or email marketing, or signing up to a newsletter, through to the sales process, processing the order, shipping the order, or delivering the subscription, or however that service is delivered, or even things like the help desk. A lot of these are outsourced functions. A quote there from one of our CISOs saying they store data about their clients in about 1,000 different systems, and a typical organization is going to suffer a data breach, probably once a month. So the key thing is, how do you discover it, and how do you do something about it? So if you remember that example we saw earlier with this employee, Marcus at Green Electrics, when we look at that data and say, okay, where did that data come from? How did it leak out? And how would you know if that was your customer data showing up on a dump site? So that original post, when we looked at it, this is the original back in 2018, that had 2,136 email addresses in from lots of different domains. A lot of them were in the UK. But one of the things we could see straight away from that post was a very unusual password being used in two different entries here, just on this preview we saw in the platform. We've changed the name here, but it was a coffee company name that was being used as a password, which is quite unusual. So we analysed the data of those 2,000 passwords and found that 10% of them were relating to coffee, and a lot of them to this specific coffee company, where people were using either the name of the company or a variation of it in their password, or just things relating to coffee. So, very unusual password, and so definitely that suggests the data had been lost from, this website. And in fact, it was very easy for us to find this particular coffee pod company, where there was only one company in the UK importing this particular brand from the US. And their website had been compromised, and very, very standard kind of breach where the website had been compromised. Some malware was scraping off the email addresses and passwords of all the users, and so everybody that had logged into that website for the past few months was having their username and password skimmed off at the point of entry, and that was how our customers' data got exposed. So when you think about, how would you detect breaches of your customer data? Well, firstly, you want to try and prevent them. So you want to detect those vulnerabilities, whether it's your login credentials or your server infrastructure or your people. So the DRP can hopefully help you understand what vulnerabilities you have, so you can prevent data access. But then also you want to detect if that data does leak out. You want to detect in real time if that's being marketed or leaked or misused. Lots of different techniques which we would talk about on another webinar. So there's lots of different ways of using the DRP to search for these. But I've got a couple of examples. One is the company brand name. So often hackers will use your company's name if they're trying to market or leak your data. So here's a real example I found yesterday very easily. This is from August, where there was a leaked database from this Indian e-commerce site, PropShop24. So there's the website on the left, and what I can see on the right is a SQL dump of, it says here, I think about 800,000 customers, and it's a database dump. we see this quite a lot. It's being posted on a hacker forum as data for sale, and they've given an example of 2 or 3 customer records. And I can see here I've got the full database, so I've got field names and the entries behind those. So looking for mentions of your company name, looking for mentions of database identifiers can be a really good way to spot that a data breach has happened and your data is being advertised on a dark web forum for sale. Another approach is to monitor for those database names, table names, column names. So here another example, we can run a keyword monitor, a keyword alert based on these particular keywords, and this will catch maybe as an example here we see again on GitHub a database dump being released where I've got the name of that database, I've got the table name here as well being highlighted, and here I see some data being exposed on this paste site. So real database entries relating to my system. So just by monitoring a few simple search terms, I can detect those leaks happening in real time. And then the final category, business critical data. This can mean different things to every single business has got different ideas of what kind of data they wouldn't see leaked out there. But this could be things like counterfeit products. It could be leaks of your intellectual property, accidentally or deliberately. It could be data relating to sensitive commercial transactions. It can be bid submissions being leaked and shared online. Here's an example of some pharmaceutical products, so some drugs here being sold on a dark web marketplaces. So by monitoring for the names of your products, you can detect counterfeit products being sold. Maybe this is a leak that's happening from the factory or through your supply chain, and you can investigate it and do something about it. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an overview of digital risk protection, how it can help defend your business against those threats, whether it's login credentials, those core infrastructure assets, data about your customers or business critical information. Because the DRP solution is monitoring outside the network, it doesn't matter where your data is being stored or processed. We can detect breaches happening either maliciously or through human error using that very simple, very easy to configure DRP platform to detect those events happening in real time, alert your staff, help you take action to understand what's happened and address the cause either through a takedown or by addressing the vulnerabilities that have been discovered, whether that's a compromised password or a weakness in your network. So that was pretty much the end of my session. I'm happy to take any questions. We can easily generate for you an automated footprint report. So if you want to look at for your own organization, how many compromised credentials are out there, the team at Bulwark can get those generated for you, just to give you some idea of what exposure your own organization has got. I think I really wanted to leave you with a few key thoughts. So digital transformation and the adoption of cloud has really driven a step change in the risk to all of our businesses. And defending the perimeter, building the walls higher really isn't a viable strategy anymore. You need to be looking outside the perimeter as well. So with the automated DRP solution, that helps you reduce those risks by detecting those threats and breaches in real time to minimize impact on your revenue, your internal resource to deal with those breaches, and most importantly, your company reputation. So that's it from me. Thanks very much. I'm really happy to take some questions now. If we've got any that have come in through the Q&A. So Prakash, maybe did you want to moderate the questions?
We've got one question. What can we do if our staff email logins and passwords have already been breached? Isn't it too late to do anything then?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think often breaches of staff credentials happen through a third-party system that's been compromised. So maybe the employee has signed up to a website that's been hacked and those credentials have been leaked. as soon as that's detected, the main thing you can do is to get the employee to change their password on all these other sites they've used it on, and definitely do things like force a password reset. And you can use some very simple automation here. So, for example, if you detect a password from a VIP in your organization, so maybe somebody in the C-suite, or someone that's got access to sensitive information, if they work in the finance team, maybe you can just automatically force a change of password on the corporate systems as a precaution. But really, it's also about informing the member of staff and educating them, because if you can let that employee know that this password has been exposed, that really focuses their attention to get them to go and change it elsewhere. So the important thing is that you can limit the damage and force them to change that password everywhere, because the hackers will carry on sharing this data for months or years to come. And the only way to deal with it is to go and change it everywhere you've used it.
Thanks, Jeremy. We have another question. How much cybersecurity expertise would I need to manage the Skurio system, and what training and support do you offer?
Yeah, good question. We really focus on making the solution very easy to use. So it really doesn't take a lot of resource to set up. We will usually train you and help you do the configuration, and usually within 1 or 2 hours you can have the system set up and running and alerting. So for most organizations, you really don't need much resource in-house. Often you will only be generating a few alerts every month. And if you have a high volume of alerts, there's also managed service partners that we work with who can provide that as a managed service. But for most organizations, this can be quite a small part of their cybersecurity resource. Doesn't take a lot of expertise. I think if you're working for a large organization where you are very sensitive to data breaches and you want to be doing more proactive threat intelligence monitoring, then sometimes you might need 1 or 2 people who are doing this as part of their job. But really, what we're doing here with the platform is bringing all of that data into one place to make it very easy for them to deal with. So if you've got staff that are currently doing threat research by hand, or searching different sites, that can be very time consuming and be very error prone. So what we're doing with the automation here is making this very easy to focus your staff effort away from data collection and onto dealing with the threats.
Thanks for that, Jeremy. We have another question. Can you explain more about your data sources, how many you monitor, and if you cover all of the dark web or only specific sites, for example?
Sure, no, that's a good question. I mean, and we cover tens of thousands of sites, probably more. I don't even know how many different sites we cover, but we've currently got within our database about 3 billion posts from lots of different sites across surface, deep, and dark web. I mean, the dark web itself is, nobody really knows how big it is. It's impossible to get to 100% of it. So really we focus on getting in the sites that are really related to corporate data being leaked or marketed or sold. Obviously, there's a lot of other things on the dark web like drugs and weapons and things like that, which isn't really a focus for our customers. But generally, we're getting to as much of the dark web as we possibly can. In order to get to the, every single last site, you would need to have dedicated threat intelligence analysts doing that by hand, which is very expensive and very time consuming. So really with the automation, we're covering, the vast majority of the sites and bringing all of that data into one place. It's not just the dark web itself. There's lots of forums and dump sites on the surface internet that are used to share and leak data. And some of those examples I showed you from things like hacker forums. Some of them you have to get invited into, so they're not easy to find and they're not easy to get into. But yeah, it's constantly changing landscape. Even social media platforms like Telegram are being used now a lot to share data and advertise it.
Thank you. We have another question. What can I do if I discover a fake domain and website? Who do I go to and what do I need to do to remove it?
Yep, very good question. So again, in sort of this kind of example where we've detected a website, then one of the things you can ask the Skurio team to do, if you don't want to do the investigation yourself, is we have the options of asking one of our analyst team to go and investigate the site. And really with fake sites, it's about understanding, when can you go and get that taken down? So, for example, if we look at this example of grindleysandco.com, where we've got this domain has been registered and is just parked, unless that is infringing my trademark or my logo, I don't have any legitimate grounds to go and request that that is taken down if I can't see any evidence it's being used for spam or phishing. But as soon as I've got a fake site like this that's been put up that's infringing my copyright, my logo, it's impersonating me, then what we would do if we're doing a takedown service for somebody is to go and so if you request us to do a takedown, we would go and contact the domain registrar, the hosting company, maybe the certificate provider. We can often blacklist the site by reporting it to various phishing and spam lists, and so you can try and prevent your customers or your staff accessing that site. So probably 80% of the time we can get a website, a fake website, taken down within a few hours or days. Sometimes it isn't possible. Sometimes it's very difficult if it's hosted on a dark web server, or if it's hosted in a difficult country to get cooperation from. That can be very hard. So there, what you can do is maybe educate your customers about it, let them know that they shouldn't be clicking on any links from this fake domain. So there are also ways you can communicate with your customers and staff to try and reduce the risk from that fake site.
Thank you, Jeremy, for that insight on that. One last question coming up. Do you offer analyst services? Is in conjunction, I suppose, to what you just answered. Do you offer analyst services to manage the system for us, check the results, and advise what we should do?
Sure, absolutely, yeah, and that's it depends on what your internal resource and skills are like. But we can a lot of our customers take the SaaS platform from us and do the first level of analysis themselves. But then we have this Ask an Analyst button you can see there. That for small inquiries that's included in the subscription. It's free. But if you want a layer of managed analyst services on top of that, then we can provide that either on a regular basis, so every month, spending a certain amount of time reviewing the platform, or if you have an incident and a breach, our analyst team are always here to help you deal with that specific project. So yes, we do that through our in-house analyst team, and we also have managed service partners around the world who are very familiar with these risks on our platform that can do this for you as well. So depending on how you need to deploy it, you can deploy it as software only or software plus our analyst services.
Okay, we've got one thing that just come in. Question: what is the most riskiest web browser?
I'm not sure I really have an answer to that. I'd say I would use any of the mainstream browsers, but keep them up to date. I think obviously you need good endpoint protection, but myself, I use Chrome. I think it's Google do a good job of blocking malicious sites and keeping the browser up to date. But I think because a lot of the open source browsers now are based on Chromium, so the new Microsoft Edge is fine. Obviously Firefox as well. I would be a little bit careful about some of the more specialist browsers, just because they probably
contact us for any of your requirements for Skurio, along with your customers or for your own requirements. Thanks, Jeremy. I think
thanks very much, Prakash.